about Sequoia Grove is doing something about how to declutter, which might be. So if you want information on that, I'm interested in maybe that's a subject.
Lily? Oh, Lily, yes. Yeah. Go.
Yeah, so this is how many people have problems with clutter? Yeah. You don't need to raise your hand because I know where most of you know. But if this is something you're interested in, I'm going to put it in the back table just so you can take a picture of it and consider it. You know, I'm not involved with it, but it piques my interest.
Well, and I recommend it. I know the company. They support the events as well. They'll be at the symposium, so they have my stamp of approval.
Beautiful. The other thing is our church has an event coming up there. I don't know if you know this fellow named Ryan Stevenson. If you're familiar with Christian music, he wrote In the Eye of the Storm. You know that? We're having a concert at the end of September. And if you're interested in that, I've got some flyers I'm going to put at the table as well, just so you know. I don't want to clutter, bring more clutter to it. But if you're interested, or if you know, younger family members that might, I just want to let you know we're doing that. It's a $15 deal. It's pretty cheap for a concert, but just to let you know. All right, kiddos. Can I pray for us?
Yes.
Hey, first of all, Father, we just thank you for your goodness. We thank you that your goal for us is to not just learn things, but to be effective in how we care for our own lives and how we impress and influence people around us. So I just thank you for Luz. I thank you for each one here, and I pray that you would just open our heart, that we might just be better people and better examples to our community. In all things, we choose to give you praise because you're worthy of it. We thank you in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Like I said earlier, is I am the only speaker today, so you may get out of class early. I will be around for questions, though, because of that. I forget what I should from the microphone opening. All right, as many of you know, my name is Luz Johnson, and this is to be the last class of educational series. However, I may be able to include another one, and I'll talk to Dennis about that later, sometime in November. The Asian Symposium is on October 5th, so after this I'll be focusing on that as well. All right, so I wanted to talk to you about putting your financial house in order. I know that a few of you have already gone to the class, which I really appreciate. But basically what we want to do is we want to talk about this in regards to how beneficial this is for your next of kin if something was to happen to you, whether you were to become incapacitated or pass away. Okay? So, all right. What does this look like to you? Does that look like your house? Or does that look like your house? Now, I think this is what we want our financial house to look like, but the reality is most of us have something like this. If I was to ask my husband to find our, let's say, insurance policy and said, can you look in the pink folder in the bottom drawer to the right in the office? That to me is precise, right? But it may not be to him. So even though I may have something in my head, it may be organized, we need to think about how it is for the person who's going to take care of our life, basically, in the moment that we can. So that's what this is about. Again, this is probably what it looks like. I see the pink folder in here. So I know there's a pink folder in here, right? But like I said, to my husband, it could look very different. So when we talk about putting our financial house in order, we're talking about someone being able to take care of your estate when you can't. So has anyone here been the executor of an estate or trustee? Would you have signed up for it on your own? No? Yeah. It's a hard job.
Oh yeah, it's work, but I mean, it was for my father, so yeah, I would.
Yeah, good, okay. So, it's not something that we look at as, we don't plan for it in the sense that we don't go to class for it, we don't go to school for it or anything, but it's something that we will typically do for somebody, but not something we absolutely sign up for, especially if those whose estate we're taking care of is not organized. It's a really hard job, and it can create a lot of issues. So it's not easy to be an executor. Sometimes for the executor, succession trustee, it could also strain family relationships. Why did mom pick you and not me? My answer would be, I wish they would have picked you and not me. Because a lot of times that's what happens. And sometimes it's awkward to make decisions for a loved one that we normally wouldn't want to make for ourselves. So these are just some of the questions that we look at when it comes to having everything in order for those that we love. So today what we're going to talk about is the resources that you have. The book that you have there has a lot of information, and it's so neat to have clients come in who have become clients because they've attended the class saying, I'm almost finished filling out my booklet. Yeah, if you don't have one, Dennis can pass one out to you. Yes, it's the records and rolls. Let's see. Ray and Karen. Okay, so we need more over here. Oh, I do have more, so go ahead and give it to somebody, and then I can get some a little bit later. We're not going to go through the book during the class, but I do have more back there. So these are some of the things that we're going to talk about to make sure that when you leave here, you at least have the information. And you can also reach out to me if you have questions about it as well. But again, it's nice to have somebody come in saying, I almost finished, filling out my book. So it's helpful for them to have that front of mind. Okay, so in this book, it is also available in PDF form. So if you would like it in PDF form, you can, where you signed in, you can just put PDF next to your name, and then I can send it to you in email. And that is also helpful because what you can do is you can save it, and then if you edit, put some information in, save it as something else so that you always have a clean copy. Okay? And then you can also send it to other people as well. All right, it's also your to-go document, so that this is where you want to consolidate your personal information, your banking information, your medical information, insurance, and everything that has to do with our life, basically. So, okay, so the first thing that we have here is the beneficiary audit worksheet. Now, this is extremely important, and I think I may have even mentioned this in other talks because it is so important. A beneficiary audit worksheet basically is reminding you to make sure that you have your primary beneficiaries and your contingent beneficiaries, and that it's the right person. I had a colleague that had an insurance agent as a client. Client comes in with his wife, stacks of documents and accounts and policies, and as my colleague is going through their information, they see that the beneficiary is not his wife. In fact, it was 3 wives ago. So, somebody who went in confident in what he was doing was not updating his documents. And so I'm sure there was a talk afterwards. Okay? So, primary beneficiaries are typically our spouses. And contingent beneficiaries are in case your primary beneficiary passes away before your contingent. So let's say my husband is my primary beneficiary, my son is my contingent. If my husband passes away before I do, and I don't make any changes to my documents, and then I pass away, having a contingent beneficiary is the next step. So they then become my primary beneficiary. So at that point, I don't absolutely have to do anything. It's always good to update in case you say, okay, well, my spouse has passed away. I want now my son to be my primary and my friend to be my contingent. Okay, so when your primary beneficiary passes away, your contingent automatically becomes your primary. But what happens with that is you no longer have a contingent beneficiary. Okay, so you always want to have somebody there. It also depends on if you're doing it as a person or a non-person. Because you can have non-people as beneficiaries. You can have nonprofit organizations. You can have your church. You can have Save the Whales. You can have the Children's Home. You can have any type of organization as a beneficiary to your accounts. And so that's something that is extremely important for me. I had a situation within a year's worth of time where I had several clients lose, mostly a parent. There's one who lost a spouse, but in all situations were different. This one in particular really made me more adamant about making sure that my clients had a beneficiary, the primary and the contingent. So this client, before they became a client, it was the father who was the client, but had dementia, so the son was the power of attorney. And dad had things absolutely everywhere. So we had to clean everything up. And fortunately we did, because within a few months dad had passed away. I made sure that he had the beneficiaries correct. I made sure that we streamlined everything, because if he didn't, and then there would have been a lot of issues with getting things from the different places, the forms, death certificates, and everything that the companies would have wanted. So instead of having 5 to 8 different companies that he was working with, it was one. And so it was a lot easier for me to be able to pass everything down to the beneficiaries as my client had wanted. So make sure that you do have your beneficiaries listed. Now, it could be different with retirement accounts, and I'm pretty sure that I may have shared with several of you the difference between retirement accounts and non-retirement accounts. With retirement accounts, those go directly to who the beneficiaries are. They stay, or they should stay, in those IRA retirement type of accounts as well, so that there's no severe tax implications. So for example, if you are my beneficiary and I pass away, you would then have an IRA with your name on it, beneficiary of Luce Johnson. And you would consider it a retirement account just like it was mine. Now, if it is a non-retirement account, a trust account also shows beneficiaries because you have it in your wills on how you have a beneficiary on there. But if you don't have a trust, and then you have, or should have, what's called a transfer on death designation on your investments. So let's say you come to me and we have your IRAs, we have all of that set up, but then you say, I sold my house, so I have $100,000 to invest. And I say, okay, do you have a trust? And you say no. So then what we would do is we would invest it, but let's say I didn't think about the transfer on death title, and you passed away, then it would have to go through probate. So when you have a transfer on death titling on there, then that makes it so that you do add beneficiaries on there. Okay? That's with your investments. With your bank accounts, it's called pay on death. So you want to make sure that that your banks have that. They do somewhat require it now when you open up accounts, but that's not always the case. So if you had a bank account for many years, like I've had my account at Golden One for 40 years. If I never changed it or didn't add it, back then they probably wouldn't even have that on there. So you want to make sure that you do that. Okay? Any questions so far?
Well, how would you know if you have this picture?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, Rose asked, how do you know if you have it listed on your bank? Yeah, you can go in or you can ask. It usually won't show on your statements, so you do want to you can call in and just say, I want to make sure that I have beneficiaries listed on my bank account. And if they say, you can just say pay on death. Or you can say, who are my pay on death beneficiaries? Okay, that's a good question because like I said, you don't see it on your statements, so you may not know if you have somebody or not. And you want to make sure you have the right person. You don't want your last wife on there, you want your new wife, right? So you want to make sure that you have that accurate on there.
So Liz, I have that question. regard to bank accounts, are there times when, let's say, the person dies and it's in my name, and the other person can't get in? That happen?
Do you mean if you had an account with another person and you passed away?
Like my husband?
Yeah, no, he would be able to access it. That's not a problem at all. Now, if you had somebody who was not on the account wanting to access it, they should not be able to. As soon as you pass away, there should be a trigger that for the banks to know, whether it's your, family member, somebody letting them know, because you can't have people making changes in an account that doesn't belong to them. Okay.
Let's say we both passed away.
If you both passed away, then that's when you want to make sure that you have the pay on death. If you don't have a trust. If you have a trust, then you're going to have an executor who will make sure that everything is done accordingly. Okay? All right. Any other questions? Okay. All right. It also matters in regards to life insurance and annuities. You want to make sure that you have the proper beneficiaries on that as well. Okay. Let's see.
If you have an IRA, you have a beneficiary. For a contingent beneficiary, should it go to a person or like your trust?
Oh, that's a really good question. So she was asking if you have an IRA, a retirement account, and you have your primary beneficiary, should you have your trust as a contingent? Okay. I do not recommend it because what happens is when you take money out of the IRA and put it into the trust, you're triggering taxes. Okay. Now, there are some people say that you can have, I don't recall what it is, but where you can take it out of the trust so it'll pay for expenses and then put it back into the IRA. I don't know how that works, and I don't recommend it. What I recommend is to plan before so that you don't have to worry about things like that. That's a really good question. Dennis?
I set up a trust and I don't think they allowed me to put an IRA in there.
No, that's actually a different thing what she's asking. That's a good question as well. IRAs do not go inside of a trust. So anything retirement, 401ks, IRAs, SEP IRAs, Roth IRAs, none of those go in alignment with the trust, and together with the trust, but they don't go inside of the trust. Okay? Because those are what we consider tax favored accounts, whereas the trust is not. So those don't go into the trust, and then in regards to the question about contingent, the trust being contingent, again, that's not something that I would recommend. There might be an estate attorney or a tax advisor that may recommend that. I would say have a discussion between your advisors before you do something like that. Okay? Can you hear me? Okay. Emergency contact information. So this is important on several levels. One is you want to make sure that your next of kin has emergency contact information, especially if you have a friend or someone who's not a family member. Know who you want to contact. So for example, for me, I would want obviously my husband to be contacted, my son, and then whoever else you want contacted in the case something happens to you. Now, this is also very important when it comes to your accounts. The reason that is because it's not necessarily even emergency contact information other than trusted contact information. A trusted contact person is somebody who I also try to, as much as possible, require that a client has on their accounts. Now, if I have a new client that comes in and says, and I tell them, do you have somebody who, in case I ever have any concerns, or I can't get a hold of you, who I can contact? I don't talk with them about your account, but, for example, let's say I have a client who we talk every few months, it's just a hello, everything's fine, and all of a sudden they're saying, can you take this much money out? Can you take this much money out? And they tell me about they have a new friend. Well, that to me is gonna be a red flag. That to me could be fraud. So then what I would do is I would contact the person that you added on there and I would say, I'm a little concerned about Joe. He's making decisions that he's never made before. It's not common. And they can say, oh, he has some. Okay, we're gonna have to talk with them. So it's fraud prevention, especially towards seniors, because that is very common. So you want to make sure that you do have emergency contact information as well as trusted contact information for somebody who obviously that you trust. Again, in my company, we do not speak to anybody about your account. We just say we have these concerns. Or let's say I'm trying to get a hold of you because I need to make a change in your account, and they say, oh, they're in Europe, they're going to be gone for 6 months. So at least if I'm trying to get a hold of somebody, I've had clients where I tried to get a hold of them and I couldn't, and I got concerned. And so I called their kids and like, oh no, they're fine, they're actually fine, thank you. But because it's something that to me is important to make sure that I don't want to be complacent about, oh, I'll just get back to them later. So, okay, any questions on that? Okay. Okay, the roles and responsibilities. Before we go into this though, I do want to talk a little bit more about just accounts in general, on how that works, and the people who you have listed on there. And we'll talk a little bit about here as, in the roles and responsibilities. But when it comes to life insurance and long-term care insurance, because those are things that are, the long-term care planning is very important to me. A lot of people, most people don't have policies. Okay, so what I would recommend is if you have a life insurance policy, contact them to find out if your policy either has a critical or terminal care rider or endorsement. Now what that basically means is you can have a policy of $100,000. It's a life insurance policy, so normally they pay out when you pass away to your beneficiaries, right? If it has that endorsement on there, it's not something that you paid for separately, but if it has that on there, and then you may be able to use some of your death benefit in advance. So if you need care, if you need in-home care, you have to pay for something like that, it might help pay for that. Okay, this is something that I think is extremely important and not a lot of people know about. Mm-hmm.
Can you say that again, what it's called?
A critical care or terminal illness endorsement or rider. A rider is something that you pay for, an endorsement is not something you pay for. Now, with an endorsement, let's say your policy is $100,000. If you use it for care, you might get $75,000. But who cares? If you need the care, then then that's what you need to think about. So, okay.
Can you buy that separately?
No, that's not. You can purchase long-term care policies separately.
It's expensive.
Yes, they can be costly, but it can also be more costly if you can afford one and don't have one. So, the different types of long-term care policies, and there's a brochure that I put out there as well that should have these, and this is, I think, very important because so many people are going without it. And sometimes if you already have some kind of an illness, you may not qualify. Most likely you won't qualify. That's why I talk about having that life insurance, making the phone call just in case. But with long-term care, it has changed so much in the last 10 to 15, maybe even 20 years. But what happened was you have what's called traditional long-term care insurance, which is, for the most part, use it or lose it. People have paid into it, and it increases in price, And people will say, should I even keep it? And I have clients who have had it for so long that it doesn't make sense not to continue to pay for it because of their age and the cost it would be, for them to there's more of a risk if they didn't have it. But because of that happening, the reason it's getting more expensive is because we're living longer, but we're not healthy. So we're living longer with illnesses. And so, so if that's the case, like I said, that's why the long-term care policies and the traditional has become so expensive. Life insurance companies now offer policies where you purchase the life insurance policy with the purpose of it being a long-term care benefit. So when you purchase it, it's basically you're purchasing a long-term care policy, but if you pass away, there is a death benefit to it. Yeah. And then the third one is I basically call it a glorified CD. And this is one where a lot of my older clients prefer this. And it's basically a glorified CD. And of course, that's not the real term of what it is. But depending on your health, you would be able to qualify for 2 or 3 times the benefit. So if you put in, $100,000, you're in great health, and then you got, premium rate, then you would be able to get $300,000 of long-term care. Okay, so, but I say that because I think it's important for people to not just say long-term care insurance is expensive. Yes, it is costly, but because again, people are not using the traditional long-term care, and then the cost of care becomes greater. Because then what happens, you're using all of your assets. Do you then have family who's going to help pay for it? And then if not, what resources are available for low income? So those are things to think about. So it's like the snowball effect. So does that kind of not answer your question, but go with what you're saying?
Gets me started.
Yeah. And that's what I want people to do, is just get started with thinking about it.
Well, overall, it's quite complicated.
It is.
So, would the best bet be to have a financial advisor?
Yes. She was saying, would it be better for a financial advisor to walk you through that? So if you have a financial advisor, you can ask them. I do reviews as well. So I can look at it with you. I can call the company with you. I love, having these conversations and asking all these questions and using words that people don't understand and then translating it into normal people terms. Okay. So that I would say is one of my God-given gifts, is to be able to do that. But yeah, I think a financial advisor would. And then what they can also do is talk with you about how much insurance to have. You don't want to overinsure. If something costs $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, that doesn't mean you get a policy for $5,000, $6,000, or $7,000. It means that you get enough and then offset it with other income that you might have. You never want to overinsure.
So I've not been in the insurance business for a long time. So we have this whole life and then we have the term. So the whole life you can attach a rider, like the terminal case, right, that you can take out, I think 75, I don't remember percent of that for. But my question is, what about the term now? Do they also offer?
Yes, I think they do. Yeah. So on the term policies, that's why I say call and ask. Call and ask to see if they will have those endorsements on their policies. Okay. How many of you understand the reason why you would have a trust? Okay, just
All I
do.
know is you don't put probate.
Yeah. So when you have a trust, you're basically putting all of your assets into a bucket, and it's allowing you to designate, you're putting rules, you're putting instructions on what you want to happen with that. So your bank accounts should be in a trust, your house, if you have a house, put it in a trust. You know, cars, that would be, you know, talk with your attorney to see if that's something that they would recommend. If you have any artwork or anything like that, collectibles, you want to make sure you do that. Now, one of the things that can happen is you might have children who either don't belong or somebody who you don't want to include in your estate. And there might be good reason for that. So putting them in the documents anyway is a good idea. You can give them $1. Just putting down for $1, if that's the case. I mean, I don't see that would be an issue here, but sometimes what can happen is if you don't add them into the trust, then they can contest it. If you put them in there and just put a small amount, then it was very intentional for you to do that. So those are things that I've heard attorneys talk about. Unfortunately, it's something that does happen. Families do fight, and there's a lot of personality, right, when something happens. Sometimes also parents don't talk to their kids about any of this, and so it becomes a very, like a surprise when you have to start dealing with things, and it can create even more emotion. Because if kids didn't know that, you know, mom and dad are giving you 51% and then 49%, you know, what can happen to that relationship as well. So it's really important to have those conversations with children and your professionals. If you have a financial advisor who is willing to, talk with you, go through everything, and sit down with your family, so they're the ones who are the troublemakers, I guess you can say. And then let that be. I've offered my clients to sit down and be the one that says, your parents are my clients, we've really gone through all of this, and this is, my client is the one whose interest I'm in, it's my best interest to work for my client. And so sometimes it's having those hard conversations with family members, because, and then I walk away and they can hate me all they want. I'm the one who's basically making the recommendations that this takes place. So if it's something that they don't like, they're not going to hate the parents. They might not be happy with them, but at least it's because they've gotten the professional help on advice on how to manage things. So let's go here. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about the executor role. They're the ones who basically make sure that all of your wishes after you have passed are now put in order. Okay, so that's the trigger. They look through your trust. They look to see where you want everything to go, and then they're the ones who manage all of that. Trustee. So the trustee, there could be a personal trustee. You could have a successor trustee while you're alive. So for example, I have a client right now who the husband and wife are trustees. He has passed away. So now daughter is trustee with mom, right? Now, if for some reason daughter can't do it anymore, then she would have the successor trustees who would then step in place for that. Once mom passes away, that's when the trust starts to get dissolved. Okay, it can take a while, because it would be selling the house, having to do the taxes and all of that. So the estate then starts to be dispersed and dissolved after the trigger of the second trustee, or the grantor, the people who own the trust, passes away. So, all right. Corporate trustee is basically the same thing, but instead of having a family member do it, you have a business or like a financial institution.
Because I'm not as familiar with some of it, when we mentioned the executor, that's a will.
A trust.
A trust.
Yes,
Oh,
no, that's a good, yeah.
The trustee is different.
So the will, I'm glad that you said that. I was gonna go with the wills and the powers of attorney. I don't know if that's on here. I don't recall if that's on here, but we can go ahead and go into that. So just think of the trust again as the bucket that you put all your stuff in. The wills are where you want it to go. My desire is for all of my non-retirement account assets to go to the zoo or whatever So those are the instructions. Okay. Now, when you put together a trust and they do the wills, they also do the powers of attorney. Now, you can have powers of attorney and wills without having a trust. Okay? Because if you don't have the amount of assets necessary for a trust, then you don't need a trust. But the wills, yeah, you want these things, you still want to give instruction to where everything goes, right? Now, the powers of attorney are important. Powers of attorney are while you are still alive. That's the only time that they matter. So you'll have two types. You'll have the healthcare, advanced healthcare directive type of, where this person has the ability to, oh, thank you. They have the ability to speak on your behalf. And it's not just speaking on your behalf, but they are making the decisions as if you were.
I did that for my mom.
Okay, yeah.
And I have student finances.
Yeah. So, and then there's the financial one. So there's the financial power of attorney as well. Now, I jokingly say, don't have your medical power of attorney be the same person for your financial, because they might want to kill you off. Again, it's a joke. But
Stranger Things.
yeah, again. But again, even as it's a joke, there are some reasons why you may want to have different people as your financial powers of attorney versus your medical. If you have somebody that's close by, they might be the one that you want as your medical power of attorney, because if you go into the hospital or you have health issues, then they are probably more available to you. Your financial power of attorney, you want to make sure that it's somebody who is financially taking care of their own assets. Someone who is responsible. You don't want somebody to have it who, has a lot of debt, credit card, whatever it is, has a lot of issues, because if they do, they might do the same thing with your assets. And now of course whoever you put on there, you want to trust that they're doing the best for you. But you do want to make sure that you get somebody who's responsible. And be okay with kids getting mad if you choose one over the other. So you just want to look at, and you can have the same person do both. For my mom, because there's so many kids, two of my sisters are both the financial and the medical, because they're around her a lot more than I am. Even though I'm in the financial industry, it makes more sense for them to be responsible for that. She can still make her decisions, but they help her with all of that. And if it got to a point where she could no longer make those decisions, that's when the power of attorney would really get triggered. Mm-hmm.
That's where I get tripped up. So, and I haven't done power of attorney for financial because I don't know when that would kick in, because I don't want it to kick in at all unless I can't speak or think.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how to do
That's
that.
the only time that it will. So you should have something in place, and there's two different ways. There's general and there's limited. So general basically means if something happens to you, you can no longer make your own decisions. Limited is, I'm going to be out of the country for 6 years, but I still have all my stuff here, so I'm going to allow this person to take care of my assets. I'm completely fine in my mind, but once I come back, I can now take care of myself. And the same thing for incapacity. If for some reason you are incapacitated for whatever reason you can't make those decisions, and then you can trigger it so then they do act in your best interest until you're completely fine.
But who decides when I'm not capable of doing that anymore?
Yeah, that would be a conversation that you would want to have with your doctor to see how that works, as well as your attorney. Yeah, so I think that I would put that down as homework for you, just to make sure that you do know how to, because I'm not being an estate attorney, I can't give that advice, but the way that it works is something that on the legal aspect, in the legal wording, it'll say this is what triggers that.
Because I trust the person I'm choosing, but I don't want them to know what I have unless it's absolutely necessary. I don't know, I'm just kind of private.
Yeah, well, You
I
want,
want
you
them to
want
be
to,
able to dip in there and take a look, even if they can't access it or do anything.
they
I
should.
don't want them to know my business.
Yeah, yeah, and they shouldn't have to.
Okay.
But you do want to make sure they know that they're your power of attorney.
Right,
Because
but
if
I
they
haven't
say-
done it yet, because I'm
Yeah.
still trying to figure out the nuances.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say talk with an attorney
Okay,
because that is very important. So having your powers of attorney is a big deal because if you are still alive and need that help, for someone to act on your behalf, and you don't have that, and then it just can perpetuate more issues. Any other questions?
How important is it to have an attorney?
Well, it depends on your assets. She asked, how important is it to have an attorney? It depends on what you have. I would say at least do some research online to find out when do I need one and when do you need a trust. I haven't signed up for it yet, but now we're being given access to help that software that can help with that, whether you have one or not. But I don't want to speak to that yet because it's so new to our industry to be able to have access for that for clients. But that would be something that you can ask. You can just look online at what point do I need an attorney. When Jennifer Brown was here and spoke, she did give some resources on being able to do your some of the documents, I think the powers of attorney through the county, which is free service. And I don't know if she has it on her website. There's some of her brochures are back there. But if that's something that you need also, you can put next to your name that you want the legal resources. You can just put legal resources and they'll know what you're talking about.
If you don't have a power of attorney and you need it, we had a situation in the family where that was the situation. We had to go to the courts and had someone named a guardian for that person.
That's
And it was
horrific.
terrible and delayed the person's care.
Yes. So when
We
you
gotta have it.
Yeah, thank you for that. When you do not have a power of attorney and something happens to you, then the state will assign somebody as a conservator. And that is not a good situation to be in. So I recommend that you do, think about that. So
How does that power of attorney relate to the executor?
no, those are completely different things. Executor, trustee, power of attorney, completely different roles. Yeah. And in the book, you can also read through it a little bit more extensively, but it tells you exactly what they do. So, and then guardian is if you have a young child who's going to take care of your child if something happens to you as well. So, so those are very different roles. So trustee, my husband and I are the trustees of our trust. If for some reason we want to add our son to be a trustee, we can do that, or he can become the successor trustee, and then when we pass away, he becomes the executor. While we're still alive, he's our power of attorney. He would take care of our medical and our finances. So these are all completely different roles.
Basically, the trustee and the executor are the successor trustee after you pass away. And the power of attorneys are both when you're alive.
Yes, exactly. Yep. So powers of attorney are only while you're alive, and they are for, again, acting on your behalf on the medical and the financial. Okay. Now, one thing that we talked about when the attorney was here as well is the POLST form. Do you remember the POLST form? We talked about the bright pink form. So for those people who are not familiar with that, it's a form that you do want to have a discussion with your doctor about. So this has to do with, do you want to be resuscitated or not resuscitated if something happens to you? If you don't, all the questions in there. If you do, it says, okay, do you want it to save your life? Do you want it just for intermittently, or why do you, like what are the levels or reasons why you do want to be resuscitated. And if that's the case, do you want to be on a feeding tube? Do you want, like, what is the goal for all of this? And I have one back there as an example, but that's something that you want to have a conversation with your doctor about in case something happens. And the purpose of that is if emergency personnel, the paramedics have to come to your house, that they see it. That's why it's bright pink, and it's supposed to be on your refrigerator. And I don't remember if it was here when I said it, but my mom had a doctor come to visit because of her insurance. She had the benefit of a doctor coming to visit, and he did a 2-hour assessment with her. And then he asked her about the pulse monitor, and she probably said that she had it. He goes, "Where is it?" And it was locked up in the safe with her other stuff. And I knew that was going to be the case. That's not where it belongs. The paramedics are not going to go looking for your trust documents, your powers of attorney, or anything like that. They will look to see if that's on your refrigerator.
They need that.
Yes.
So they know whether how that.
Exactly, yes. So if you put that you don't want to be resuscitated, they're legally obliged to not resuscitate you. There's a lot of people in assisted living communities. I have a friend of mine who said that they had lost a few people, and that was because they didn't want to be resuscitated. And so the paramedics were required to just stand back. Yeah, so you have to make that decision if that's something that you want to do. There's also the vial of life. I know that it has been in the past, it was where it was a little prescription bottle, you fill it out and put it in your refrigerator, and so they would look for that. There's some pamphlets there that have that information as well. So you can add that onto your refrigerator as well. And that talks about prescriptions and everything else that you have. So Pulse is different than the vial of life or what the paramedics have there regarding the prescription, because they need to know the prescriptions so that is it going to be reacting if they have to give you any type of medication when they're at your home. So, okay. Okay. So we talked about powers of attorney, healthcare directive, which is basically the same thing as a power of attorney but for the medical. The guardian, not a lot that we need to talk about there unless you have small children. Now, talking with your family. If you have not had these conversations with your family, I recommend that you do. Because, again, you don't want to be surprised. Or you don't want them to be surprised saying, "Are you kidding? I need to now take care of all of the state, and the state is a mess," or "I don't even know what to do. I've never done this before." Most of us don't sign up for something like this. You don't want them to be surprised. Now, if you're coming to these classes, it's because you want to be prepared, which means I hope that you want your family to be prepared as well. So having family meetings or at least just discussions, if you have your kids at the house and you say, "Hey, I went to this thing and I don't know if we really had this conversation. But this is the stuff in our trust," and because I think we're at an age now where it's important for our kids to know, because anything can happen. We're not promised tomorrow. Okay. These are just some ways of being able to do that. If you want to make it formal, you want to have a family meeting, you want to schedule it. I think most people don't do something as elaborate as this. But just however you're comfortable with it. And if you think that it is a meeting that can create a little bit of tension, and then have a third party there. Like I said, like your advisor or your state attorney. Because, like I said, let them hate us because we walk away. And if you are our clients, then that's the most important thing for us. So, any questions?
I don't actually know what your role is. You're made reference to yourself, but I don't.
Well, thank you for asking. I think it's because most people do know. So I'm a financial planner. I've been in the business for I'm in my 18th year. And so my role as a planner is to help people in all of this, making sure that everything is in place, making sure that all of their assets are in place, that there's no gaps in their plan, basically, as much as possible. And I work with different professionals regarding other topics that I think are important for me to know as a planner. And so I've had them come and speak about different topics as well. So yeah, thank you for asking. So, okay.
Liz,
Uh-huh.
you talked about power of attorney, power of,
So there's power of attorney for finances and power of attorney for medical.
are they both called power of attorney?
Yes, yeah. Advanced healthcare directive is sometimes, as you'll know, it for medical. Well, there's an executor.
But anyway, if you're putting the policy to distribute power of attorney.
Yes, absolutely. Because when you're not healthy, that's when it's triggered. You don't want to wait until something's wrong before you get the powers of attorney in place. Yeah, that's a good question. So you want to have all of this in place before you need it. Because by the time you need it, it's too late.
Oh, all these terms, I have all these people, but I get these terms all mixed up. Power of attorney for finance and medical, that's while you're still alive, they're in charge. And those same people are the executor.
They can be if you choose them to be.
They're the executor in charge of your, so they're in charge. One of them's in charge while you're alive, and one of them's in charge when you pass away.
The trustee is the one that's in charge right while you're alive, and
That's
you can be
us.
the trust. Yes, you
But
can be
then
the
there's
trustee.
two other terms about other people besides us.
Yeah, so there's the successor trustee as well as the executor. So successor trustee is somebody who, I can see what the term is on here. I want to make sure I have this correct. But the executor is after you passed away.
Executors after you pass away,
Correct.
who's in charge of your estate,
Correct.
your trust.
Yep, of dispersing everything. And all of this is in your books. So the executor is the one who ties up all of your affairs after you pass away. It's also considered a personal representative. Here in California, it's called an executor. And then the trustee is the person when it's created. The creator of the trust names someone who serves as trustee. So even though you are the owner of the trust, you are named a trustee.
We
So-
are the trustees.
Correct. And
Yeah.
so you can then name somebody else as a trustee on there.
But then it's the executor who's somebody else, and the,
It's up to you who you want. So just think about the roles. You have the different roles. You have trustee, which you're the trustee, okay? You want another trustee to be part of that with you, then you would add them up in there. Okay, so you have trustee, executor, powers of attorney. Okay, these are all four completely different roles, but you can have the same person.
power, why are they called two different things just because one, they're called power of attorney when you're still alive, but they're called an executor after you pass away?
Nope.
But they can be the
Completely different
same
roles.
people.
Completely different roles. The power of attorney acts as if they're you in your finances and in your medical decisions. Okay? So just think about that. Power of attorney, just imagine somebody stepping in your place. I can no longer pay my bills, so I, power of attorney, am going to pay those bills for you. Okay? I don't know if I should, stay in the hospital for another week, or should I get or in-home care? I, sick person, can't make that decision right now, so I, power of attorney, I'm gonna see what is the best option for this sick person, right? So just think of that. Don't put a name on it until you know this is the best person for me to be power of attorney on financial. This is the best person to be power of attorney for medical. And if it happens to be the same person, that's fine. But think of them as completely different roles for different things. So executor, you passed away. Powers of attorney, you have not passed away. Okay? Libby Tennyson and
For about 3 months, there was someone in the church here that was in the hospital. And I was their power of attorney, medical and financial.
okay.
I made sure that their finances were I paid the bills, did all that sort of stuff. They're no longer needing me at this point. Right? So it was a temporary thing.
Yeah, so that would be a limited.
I was them for that moment. I don't want to stay them.
Yeah.
Right? But it really, basically, it's It's somebody who cares about you enough to step in while you're not able to.
Yes, and take the responsibilities that you normally have.
Absolutely.
So we
Gloria and then Rose.
we can download the form, right? You said online,
Mm-hmm.
but we have to fill up the two. Right?
Yeah, the verbiage will be completely different.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we can download it, print it, and then.
Yeah, and you may want to have it notarized. I'm pretty sure you have to have it notarized as well. Yeah, Rose?
I think I heard in one of the other sessions that probably it's not a good idea to have 2 people as executives.
Well, it depends. Do they get along? If not, then maybe not. Because even though they should be for your benefit, you got attitude. I mean, you can have lots of different personalities. Dennis and then
So for my father, my brother and I were executives. We get along famously.
Yeah.
I just needed somebody to talk to.
yes,
Like, I did all the heavy lifting. He lives in a different city. I did all the work, and I'm okay with that, but I had somebody to talk to. So
yes,
that worked for us.
good. Okay.
Well, my dad had my brother and I as co-executors, but then my sister said, your brother, he's not gonna do all this stuff. So Daddy changed it. If we would have had to go everywhere together and sign all of this paperwork together, it never could work.
And I think it could be one or the other. It doesn't have to be both. So, so you want to make sure the wording is like that.
And sometimes people have different expertise. We have one successor trustee who's in Texas and one who's here because we've got Texas land.
Yes.
And the California girl's not gonna know what
Yeah.
the heck is going on. in
Everything's
Texas.
completely different. No, that's a really
So
good
they
point.
really need to work together, not sign things together, but explain to each other
Yeah.
what's going on.
So even being a resource to each other.
Yeah, it's to help them.
Yeah.
In my situation with my mom, being in charge, well, I was in charge of both, but I was a registered nurse, and so I understood the medical choices.
Mhm.
I understood what was best, and what was not best for her. Is there any recommendation that someone have some more medical background?
Well, it's nice.
Yeah,
It's nice when
that.
you do.
Yeah.
Most people don't have that. I do have a client who is a nurse, and she's dad lives in a different state. She has 2 sisters who live same state as dad, and so they help with lots of other stuff that she understands. She reads his records. She knows what everything means. So that's a benefit, but not everybody has that.
It'd be good if they had someone that run it past enough person that is, because it's difficult to make decisions. and
Oh,
quite
yes.
understand what
Yeah.
the repercussions of them are.
Yeah. And a lot of the decisions that are hard to make are when they have to do with health. It's like, when do we let mom go? And so having that support is also beneficial. So, okay. Any other questions? Okay, we are almost done, so we will get out of class early. I just want to make sure we've gone through everything. Okay, so just steps to take. You do want to make sure that you look at all of your assets, your documents, make sure, 1, that you understand them, 2, that they're up to date, 3, that if you have anybody who you have listed, that they know it. You want to make sure that if your sister or your daughter is going to be a power of attorney, that they're not shocked saying, I'm sorry, I have to make these decisions now. So you can plan with them and make it easier for them in the process as well, because this is going to be an emotional thing for them as well, especially if there's a serious illness or issue that's happening. Make sure that you do fill out the emergency contact information with your advisor. You can even ask about trusted contact person. Do I have one on mine? Can I add one on my accounts, which you should. Again, that is more for red flags. That's making sure that you're not being taken advantage of, or if any concerns come up for us as advisors, that we can keep that from becoming an issue. Schedule your meeting and then set real expectations. You can't expect, everybody to appreciate and enjoy and accept your decisions, and know that. But there's certain reasons why you have to be okay with that. One is knowing that, child one is terrible with their finances, child two is amazing with their finances. This child may be upset that you're making that decision, but you don't sway just because they get upset, because that's not for your benefit, right? Okay. Any other questions?
The thing about burial instructions, I know at one of the sessions they had somebody who represented
Yes.
funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you go about finding a funeral home that, there's a lot of things you can't trust anymore.
Yeah. I was asking, how do you go about finding a funeral home, someone that you can trust? Well, I think partially is word of mouth. If you have somebody who has experienced a situation that used a specific company, whether it's funeral home or anything else, asking about their experience. Also with funeral homes, if I recall, they're required to have on their website the list of expenses that they have. And you are in control, so you can go into a meeting. Again, this has to do with, regardless of the professional that you go see, is you have the control to say, no, I'm not comfortable with this, or I can wait. So be okay with knowing that, you can go in there and make those decisions. But you want to make sure that you're asking, family or friends who have experienced something and have said great things about a person or a company.
You have a place where people write either recommendations or problems with different.
I think that the only place that I've heard of is Better Business Bureau, but even that, I'm not sure how much I trust. So I would say ask around. Don't just do research online. Yeah, talk to your pastor as well. Because they vet. Dennis is very good at vetting and protecting the flock, which I appreciate that he's allowed me to come and speak with you. But I'm the same way. I am vicious when it comes to protecting my, those who I care for and teach. And so when I have somebody come up and do a presentation, do something like this, is because I work with them, I trust them, and if there does become an issue, I'm okay with saying what happened and not working with them. Fortunately, that has not been an issue, but I very much will speak up if I see that there's an issue with somebody who I've trusted to speak to my, people who attend my seminars and things like that. So, Any other questions? No? Okay, last thing that I want to say is a reminder that the aging well. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
We used to live in Monterey Peninsula.
Lucky you, why did you move?
At that time, we were thinking ahead when we just lived there. So we contacted cemetery and funeral home and stuff like that. And we bought a plot and everything. So now it's way down there, but never probably.
We'll never use it, yeah.
So we'll use it to pay for it.
Well, you know what, that actually is a good point, because depending on what cemetery it is, they might, if they have locations in other areas, you may be able to transfer your ownership. The second thing is, I think you can sell your plot. There are people who you use. I don't know if you would do it through the funeral home.
At a profit.
Exactly, yeah, just like a house, you can sell it as a profit.
They make it so hard, it's almost impossible. They make it so hard. I tried, and,
Did you try to work directly with them?
yes.
That's why.
They will not sell.
They won't give you anything.
Exactly, because they don't want you to, I mean, they don't want you to go elsewhere. I would say if you find somebody here, whether you use Monty from Dignity Memorial or another company, just say this is the situation. Would you be able to help us in that process?
Can I share something? My mother passed away, she was with me, but most of the family was in Southern California, and she had already figured everything out, but they drove up here, picked her up, and took her down there. That was part of their service, was that we all went down and had the funerals all set up, so they actually transported the body.
Yeah, the funeral home?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they all transport.
So if you still have family down there, is what I was thinking, it might still be
Yeah.
as well to just do something.
Yeah, there are people who will follow their kids to where, they retire and they follow where their kids are, and kids end up moving away again because that's normal, and then mom and dad stay there, but that's not home because their family's not there, so they may go back to where they grew up, so.
My mother had pre-arranged when she lived in Florida, and she passed when she was here. And the local cremation society honored her contract for Florida at the same price, 30 years.
Nice. Yeah, actually,
And that was
I
just
think-
2 years ago.
Yes, I'm glad they brought that up because I think that's what Dignity Memorial does as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find out who the cemetery is that we have in Monterey to find out if they have other locations and if they honor that. But that's really good information. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, any other questions? All right. So this has been so much fun for me to be able to have these. This is essentially the last one, except for Dennis. I don't know if you overheard me saying we may have one more in November, if you allow me to.
We'll talk.
Okay. Okay. But I have had so much fun, and it's just neat how all of this has come to fruition. So as a planner, I've always had these courses, and then Aging Well kind of was birthed out of that, and the symposium, the conference. And then because of Dennis's, just the conversation that I had with him, the educational series has come to be. And so I think this will continue, whether it's here or elsewhere. But now to be able to have this opportunity to help, and it has been so much fun to have so many of you be at these, and just to see you in different areas and seeing that this has been very beneficial to you. So I want you to know that it has been a humbling opportunity, a huge blessing, and seriously, you guys just made me smile. I absolutely love doing these. And so with that is again, going back to the symposium is on October 5th. I can email you as long as I have your contact information and you're okay with me sending you information, so you can register. Last year we had probably about 100 participants and about 35 vendors, and or tables. I don't like to say vendors because they're not here selling anything, but they are there to be a resource for you. So the people who have spoken at these classes will be there, and a lot of other ones. And again, it's one of those events that I want you to be able to get out of it everything that you need to plan. And so I make sure that there's a mix of all senior industry professionals so that you do have that. I think that's it.
So what is it called?
Aging Well Symposium and Resource Fair. It's going to be on Saturday, October 5th at the Orange Walk Community Center. And I just created the flyer, so I printed it out, but I can email them to you as well. So we are out early. We have snacks. Oh, I'm sorry?
That's okay. Is someone from SAC-RT going to be at your Aging Well?
I'm
Is that driving things the part that concerns me when I can't drive? How do I get around?
Yeah, I'm actually glad that you asked that because last year I wanted them there and they didn't respond. So I'm going to let them know.
Harass them.
Yes, and ARP, I also had contacted them and didn't hear back from them. So I don't know if I need to do like a local chapter or something. And that's another thing. If there are topics that you need to know about, I'm sure I have the resources, but I just haven't thought of the topic. So please let me know. And if you have any questions on anything that you need, after all of these are done, or just on anything, let me know. If I don't have the answer, I'm sure I probably have somebody who does. So, but yeah, speakers, topics, things like that, I would love to get your feedback on. Did you have something to say? Oh, okay. All right. Do you want to close us out, and then we can go and we can have our snacks? And then also, I want to just reiterate, Carlton has been amazing at just their sharing of the refreshments each time. They weren't able to come by today to drop the stuff off, so I brought them with me. But again, if you do consider any type of assisted living, just contacting them to see if it's something that they can answer questions. You can turn the community and.
Did you say Carlton?
Carlton, right here on Oak Avenue. Yes, yeah, they purchased it a few years ago. All right.
First of all, can we just give a round So I'm very thankful for her. I don't think I need a mic, but if I do, let me know. I have 6 kids. I know how to project. So here's the thing that I'd like to, first of all, I want to thank you, Luz, for bringing something to us that forces adults to make adult decisions. Really, making hard decisions today makes it easier in the future for us and our children. That's really the case. So this is forcing us at least to think about adult things. Does it make sense? Mm-hmm. And so thank you for that. That's not easy. That's not an easy conversation. Yeah. And the Bible says in Ephesians that people like Luz is designed to equip us to do work. I can stop right there. Who likes to do work? Nobody likes to do work. But the goal is that we would grow up. How many people want to grow up? No, we're still in Peter Pan land, right? I don't want to grow up. So thank you for equipping us. Thank you for the series. I didn't want this to end.
Okay.
So I thought I had you forever. But would you join with me as we pray for her? Okay. So Father, first of all, I just thank you for Luz. I thank you for her ministry, her heart and care for our community. That this church, this church and Orangevale and the community at large, I thank you that her desire really is to equip, is to encourage people to be prepared to not be off guard against all the things that are out there. And I know that this is complex, and I thank you for her giftedness to translate this whole legal stuff and financial stuff and other stuff into stuff that makes sense to us. But thank you for her. And I pray that you bless her as she takes the tests that are in her future, encourage her, and again, let her platform just explode. And we just thank you for that. Bless her and her family, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you. All right, you have to worship.